Well, welcome. My name is Jose Torres. I'm the president of the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, and I'd like to welcome you this morning to the PD County Day. And just wanted to make a few comments before our keynote speaker is introduced and you get a chance to get this thing kicked off. So the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, for those of you who might not know, was established by the General Assembly in 1985 as an agency of public policy to further stimulate math and science education throughout the state and to serve the needs of talented students with an interest in math and science. We do that through the residential program, and we're mostly known for that. We have 650 students who live with us. You won't see too many of those today because today is our I-Day, our investigation day. We normally have it on Wednesdays, but we wanted to accommodate all of you and we were able to move that day. We'll have some students here. The sophomore class is usually on campus, and there will be other students who are here pursuing their own research. And you are welcome to stop them and say, what is I-Day and where are the rest of the students, so you can learn more about that. Our second legislative charge is to further stimulate math and science education throughout the state. And we do that through PD Days, but we do that also through developing curriculum and programs, after school, fusion, and so forth. And so those are our two legislative charges. So, and IMSA is a state agency. And so again, welcome to your IMSA. This is a state agency. It belongs to the people of Illinois. How many of you have been to our PD sessions before? You see? Oh, great. So you guys know all your way around. And how many of you are high school teachers? Okay, I figured. Middle school? Okay. Others? Significant others? Elementary teachers? Elementary teachers? And who are not, people who are not in the classroom? I met technologists out here, right? Well, welcome all of you. Happy March 4th. I was driving in this morning and I was thinking, by now, everyone's New Year's resolution is well behind in their mirror, right? How many of you do New Year's resolutions? Anybody? Oh, nobody anymore. Okay. So those of you who didn't raise your hand probably do, but you've already given them up. And so a few years ago, I read about, I don't do them anymore. I still have my goals and so forth, but a few years ago, I read about people adopting a word for the year, and I've started adopting a word. And so last year's my word was serendipitous. I figured it was my first year at IMSA, and I needed a nice scientific sort of word for the year. And the whole idea about the word is that you sort of meditate on it during the year, and in some ways, for me, I attract that. That's how I see it. And so it was very interesting that last year there was a lot of things that happened to me that I framed as serendipitous. And a few years ago, I had chosen bold. Bold not just in my speaking and my relationships, but bold in being transparent, bold in my spirituality and so forth. May I share with you my word this year? I really struggle. May I? No, you want to just go here and hear the keynote? Okay. My word this year was, I struggled with it. So this is the first time, you're the first people to hear about it. My word this year, I wanted a word that had to do with taking advantage of opportunity. And I couldn't come up with a word. And opportunist did not really reflect what I wanted to sort of reflect on. So I struggled with my word, and so I finally arrived at a word. As I mentioned, we're your IMSA because we're a state agency, and those of you who know about our state budget might know that we don't have a state budget. So since July 1st, IMSA has not had a state budget. Our employees are getting paid because the comptroller has deemed that state employees can get paid even without a state budget, so we're fine. But during this whole year, it's been really a struggle about, is IMSA going to close? And we can say, no, we're going to be fine. And so this scarcity mentality is all around me. And so the word that I chose this year that I'm announcing for the first time is abundance. Abundance. Think about it. there are so many great things happening in our world, but too often we focus on the scarcity about it. I saw many of you on your phones as I came in, but if you realize that 20 years ago you couldn't afford the technological power that this thing has. You couldn't afford to carry the power that these things had. And so there's an abundance of technology, there's an abundance of human talent, of potential, and so abundance is my word, and I just wanted to share it with you. And as we're about to celebrate 30 years at IMSA, Tom, I know you just learned about us, but this is our 30th year next year. We've been really thinking about how do we reimagine IMSA for the next 30 years. 30 years ago, STEM was not as popular as it is this year. And so what we're finding is that a lot of schools have caught up to what IMSA was 30 years ago. And so we've been really thinking about how do we reimagine. And so I've kind of reached back to my word bold, and we're thinking about how do we boldly sort of move forward. And so I'd like to share and leave you with this quote that I've been really thinking about as we think about how do we reimagine IMSA. And this quote is from Robert Kennedy, and he said, "Only those who dare to fail greatly can achieve greatly." Only those who dare to fail greatly can achieve greatly. So that's the word that I've been thinking. That's the quote that I've been thinking about recently about how moving forward. And I would like to again offer that to you as you think about your own classrooms and about your own personal and professional life. How are you failing lately? How are you? Because if you're not, then you're not trying too hard, right? You're in your comfort zone. And so we'd like to encourage you to take some of the sessions that you might not know much about so that you can maybe fail, learn, be at the edge, and take advantage of all the great opportunities that we have today for you to learn not only from the presenters but from each other. I'll be in some of the sessions. I hope to meet many of you and have a great day today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Torres, for that wonderful welcome. It's nice to see so many familiar faces. Good morning. I am Dora Phillips. I have the pleasure of leading the Department for Professional Development here at IMSA. My team and I would like to thank you for choosing us for your Institute Day today. We hope you leave with inspiration and a few really fun ideas to head back into your classroom. We have just a couple of housekeeping items before I introduce our amazing keynote speaker for today. When you picked up your folders, you should have everything you need to survive your day at IMSA. Important things to note, there is a bright red lunch ticket. Please don't lose your lunch ticket. You need to hand that over on your entrance into the cafeteria. The other colored tickets are for the sessions you registered for online. If you have any questions, concerns, this isn't the session you really wanted, please head back to the front desk where we can make those changes. If you have a yellow ticket for C3, so C3 has a room change. It's listed as A115, but we need to change that to B10. And the time on it is actually incorrect. That is a morning session. It starts right after the keynote in room B10. So anyone having a C3, that one will need to be changed. Okay? Also in your packet is the Wi-Fi password sheet. That has what you need to connect to the internet today. It also has the instructions for how you can download the sessions from online. In past years, we've handed you a flash drive, and then we've responded to all the emails when you lost the flash drive in the parking lot on the way to your car. It's a new digital world, so you can download any of the presenter-prepared materials for any of the sessions for this year and the past 2 years, following the directions on that sheet. So please take advantage of that opportunity, get some of the resources from sessions you weren't even able to attend. Okay? In addition to that, at the end of each session, you'll complete a very quick assessment. We didn't decide to do the PARC test, so you won't have to highlight anything today. But you will have to fill out just an old school piece of paper. Your full day session evaluation is in your packet. Please fill that out before you're ready to leave. We will be at the front door exchanging those for those magical CPDU forms. Please remember you do need to know your county when you check in and when you leave today, because different counties have different forms. You want to make sure that you leave with the correct CPDU form. We have a number of large-scale construction projects going on today at IMSA. Very exciting for us, slightly confusing for you. So if you've been here before and you know your way around the building, there might be a construction barrier in your way. There might be a closed bathroom that might have you hopping with that cute little dance our third graders do to a different bathroom. We have many staff members and students that'll be in the hallway during your passing periods to help you. Please don't hesitate to go, "Hi, I have to go potty." We'll get you there, it's no problem. If you have any questions throughout the day, definitely just head back to the front desk. Someone will always be there to assist you. At the end of the keynote, just to make life easier to get out of this room, if you have your first session in a B room or Tell Labs, you'll want to exit this door. If you have your first section in an A room, you'll want to go out this door. That way you'll already start to avoid some of our construction challenges. Next year when you come back, you'll be able to see some of our fabulous new science labs and our new Innovation Into Center for all kinds of amazing makerspace projects. I can't wait till we begin planning things for you there. It is now my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker to you. Dr. Tom Tuban earned his bachelor's degree in molecular biology from San Diego State University and a PhD in molecular genetics from Stony Brook University with Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory. He currently works as a scientist and professor in the Biotechnology department at Madison College. He teaches a variety of courses in bio and stem cell technologies. He's also the principal investigator and director for a National Science Foundation Advanced Technological Education Program project to develop workforce-centered programming in emerging stem cell technologies. Dr. Tuban oversees development of industry-based curricula and strategic implementation for local, regional, and national level STEM programs. Today, he will speak to us on changing pedagogy, contextualized instruction in STEM-related fields. Please help me welcome Dr. Tuban.
Thank you, Dora, for a really kind introduction. And Dr. Torres, I just wanted to comment about the word abundance. I love the word abundance, and you know, all of us in this room, I'm coming from the state of Wisconsin, and one of the issues that we deal with, just like you guys are dealing with here, is budget cuts and doing more with less. And so the word abundance not only, in my opinion, applies to the technology and the science and the resources that we have available, but the human capital. When I look across this room, I see people here who have an abundance of knowledge that you guys are sharing with some of our students, and I'm hoping that some of the information that I share with you today will help you and enable you to make more of those resources so that we can actually grow our STEM pipeline and do better for our students. So it's with great pleasure that I represent the academic side of the house and also the administrative side of the house, but the most important thing I think that I am here to represent is the fact that I'm a father of two, and my kids are 8 years old and 10 years old. My kids are in a very early stage of their career pathway, and they're not really thinking about too much more than just trying to make it through the day in their school day. But I had a conversation with my son just the other day, and he's 8 years old, and he said, I think I really want to be an architect or maybe an engineer. And I looked at the things he was doing, and he's playing Minecraft, and he's building things, and he's pushing really hard on the limits of what he can do for that, and he wants to take programming courses. So I'm completely encouraging him. My daughter, on the other hand, she's 10 years old, and she looks at me, she says, well, I think I want to be a singer or an actress. I was like, okay, well, that's great. And she paused for a second, and she looked at me, and she said, but I think that those take second seat because I really want to be a programmer. And I don't know if that was because she's competing with her brother, who was saying he wanted to be a programmer, or she was really, really excited about this field. But I think that, personally, I'm a little bit disappointed coming from the science and biology side of the house that they're not saying they want to be biotechnicians or scientists, but I am very proud of them for the idea of actually thinking a little bit more critically about their futures. When we talk about our kids, and I talk about my kids, I see everyone's kids reflected in their eyes. And so my presence here to promote STEM education, career pathways, and the growth of our industries and the growth of our economy, they have a very personal seed in my household But that seed is planted so that I'm hoping that we can all benefit and follow suit with nurturing our young children in our society and our communities. So I'm going to introduce a little bit of what I've been working on, and that is the entire STEM pipeline, starting with education, going into classrooms, and how we're actually starting to think about changes in the way that we approach teaching for STEM courses. And what's really pleasantly surprising is that talking with several people here already this morning, it's no surprise that these things are already in play. We contextualize the things that we do, we learn, we teach our students in ways that we learn best, which is usually with something that has real-world application. And it's a lot different from when I was in school, and probably from when a lot of you folks were in school as well. And that changing architecture of the way that we teach is something that I know is embedded in the soul and the essence of what we have here at IMSA, and what you guys are doing here today to actually grow your skill set to bring this into the classroom. So I'm going to outline a couple of things as we navigate through the STEM ecosystem. And the first thing is trying to understand the economic drivers that influence STEM education and what these are. And then I'm going to transition that into talking a little bit more about learning in context, or what actually is already in place here for the next generation of STEM students, with the idea of building the capacity and the talent. So we need to project this out into the future for job, career development. What are these students going to do for their futures, and how can we enable them to make the appropriate decisions? And then finally, align STEM education with workforce demands. Because as we move forward, we're faced with a lot of different challenges. And one of the challenges, again, is doing more with less. And so we're starting to think outside of the box a little bit more, as well as other institutions have, to see how we can actually promote the idea of building STEM by partnering with our industries, and how this actually comes into play with promoting more and more opportunities. So economic drivers that influence STEM. There are two really important studies that I want to point out. And these studies really just point out that careers in science, technology, engineering, and math are definitely on the rise. So a few years back, the US Raytheon STEM Index, they showed that there's a 30% increase in STEM jobs. And that 30% increase is also visualized in another study by Burning Glass. And some of you guys may be familiar with the Burning Glass technology studies, which indicates that there are many jobs out there. 5.7 million job openings in the STEM field is counted in 2014. And a lot of these jobs are really they're credentialed. So you're thinking about, when you go into the STEM fields, what kind of credentials do you need in order to get these jobs? Well, 4.4 million of these jobs that were identified in 2014 require a bachelor's degree or higher. And then those that don't, 2.3 million call for other middle skill level workers. And those include things like our students who are coming in through our community college and our associate's degrees, or some of our certificate programs or technical diplomas that we offer. But they require some sort of additional schooling beyond the traditional high school type education. So the take home here is that we do know, and this is just speaking to the crowd here, that the careers in science, technology, engineering, math are definitely on the rise. And this begs the question of, how are we actually doing here in the state of Illinois? How are you doing in the state of Illinois? And for this, I want to point out the STEM report card. And this is put out there by ASTRA. It's the Alliance for Science and Technology Research. And this is accessible for all 50 states and the consensus for the entire United States. This is a little bit hard to read, and it's not designed here so that you guys can actually read this through, but I wanted to point it out to you in case you wanted to go through this and just try to get some more information about the STEM careers in the state of Illinois. This information is put together by 501c3, so a not-for-profit, and they're supported by a variety of different organizations in Washington, D.C., including the National Science Foundation. So their mission is to identify all these metrics for what drives the STEM economy, and then use that to inform the development of better research and development opportunities out there for our industries. So it's a very important resource for people to be aware of. And as you can see here, it's a multiple page document, and it actually outlines the top 40 careers in STEM, the salaries, because a lot of the students are going to be asking about, well, what are the salary rates associated with a particular job in STEM? And do I really want to get into that particular job? So this is a really great resource, and I want to point that out to some of the folks here. If you're interested in getting the full report, these are free reports. So it's available at usinnovation.org, and you can get these reports at any time. It's an open resource. One of the metrics that I wanted to show from this report is listed here. And this ASTRA report, they surveyed over 6 million high school students, and from those 6 million, 1.6 indicated that they're interested in the STEM career. So it's our job to figure out how we can actually capture that 1.6 million and possibly pull in some more of those that constitute the rest of those 6 million, the thinking that a career in STEM is right for them. But one of the really striking bits of information that we can pull from the report is that we do certainly need more women in the STEM fields. 45.7% of the males who were surveyed who identify with wanting to pursue, or who are identified in this study are interested in pursuing a STEM career, whereas only 14.1% of the women and the females are. So what's really also very interesting is that if you look across the board, it's pretty much equal for a lot of these individuals who are listed up here, Caucasians, Asian Americans, American Indians. It's hovering around 30%. And the lowest population here, which could use a little bit more work with getting folks interested and informed about STEM career pathways, African American communities. And so there's many initiatives out there to reach to all of our communities. In 2015, there were over 600,000 STEM jobs that were identified in the state of Illinois. And this is projected to increase at a rate of 8% through 2024. The average rate, and this is again another salary question that many of the students will ask, how much can I make? What should I expect for a STEM career? Should I get involved in it? The salary information is on there, but in general, the average salary for someone coming into a STEM job is about $29 an hour for the hourly wage. That's not a bad deal if you think about the economy and the state of the economy nowadays. So this is the ASTRA report, and there's also another series of reports. You can figure out, and you can identify tons and tons of different reports that are going to help to promote and inform us for how we can actually move forward. For the state of Illinois and for the Chicago city proper, one of the more interesting studies has been commissioned by J.P. Morgan, and it's a 250 million new skill. It's a 5-year, 250 million study, and they're looking at a couple of different metro areas as well as international areas. And the take-home is that they can use this information to inform what are the hottest jobs in STEM, and then as a teacher, as an educator, you can actually pass this information on and help students actually develop that interest in the career pathway that may be of interest to them down the road. So I think at this point I've mentioned already that the STEM jobs are definitely out there. The problem isn't with the number of jobs, it's with the preparedness for students getting into these jobs and how we're actually approaching this in the classroom and our role as teachers. So we can look at the alignment with STEM education and careers here, and one really recent survey that was performed by Gallup for Inside Higher Ed indicates that 96% of college and university chief academic officers, they're pretty confident that the students that are coming out of their institutions are adequately prepared for success in the workforce. That's a pretty good metric, and we're talking about people who are going through the whole pathway through either higher education, bachelor's degrees, and so on and so forth. But by comparison, the Gallup Illumina Foundation poll found that just 11% of the business leaders strongly agree today that college graduates have their skills and competencies ready to match what the businesses need. That's a pretty big gap there. But to balance that out, 90% of the businesses that were surveyed are saying that they're willing to work and collaborate with educational institutions to help close that gap. So we're talking about a skills gap, we're talking about business gap, we're talking about a lot of things that are layering on themselves in order to actually push out the idea of preparing students for the workplace in these high-tech fields. So at this juncture, the summary of what I've just shown you, the number of jobs in the STEM areas are going to continue to grow. The economists project 25 million positions. Half of them fall within the middle skill range, which is what the role is for the community and technical colleges. We know that there are more STEM jobs that are out there than there are qualified students to fill them, and this constitutes part of how we define the skills gap. And then there are multiple ways, multiple efforts that are underway in order to resolve the misalignment. And I will say that coming here to IMSA and just talking about these ways that people are actually working towards developing the skill set very early on are really at the core of how to make this a successful pathway, trajectory, and job career pathway for some of these students. So in addition, what approaches are being taken to improve academic success and education to jobs pathline? Well, we know that there are government initiatives, there are state initiatives, local initiatives, and consortium advocacy. And we can talk a little bit about this, and some of you guys may be familiar with this as well. When we talk about the government initiatives, these are things that we're all potentially, possibly aware of. The OSTP, back in April 2012, they published a national bioeconomy blueprint, things that are going to actually be driven by the federal government to promote the way that we create that pipeline and create that pathway to success for our students. And then, of course, one of the recent newer ones, $450 million allocated to the Trade Adjustment Assistant Community College Career Training Program. It's a pretty big mouthful. Most of us just call it TAC grants. And those TAC grants are actually set up so that they can set up certifications and set up workforce training to get people the information they need to be successful in the workplace. And then program divisions within the National Science Foundation. And so a lot of the innovation that happens in our academic institutions in the absence of state funds and support that comes in through other avenues will come in through innovative sources like the National Science Foundation, Advanced Tech Education Centers, and so on and so forth. So those represent the government initiatives. And then state initiatives for the state of Illinois, we have the ISBE, Illinois State Board of Education, and there's a laundry list of many, many amazing things that the Illinois State Board of Education is implementing. We have the Race to the Top, we have the Common Core state standards, and the new Illinois learning standards that we can speak to. And then, of course, the Next Generation Science Standards and the Illinois Pathway Initiative that some of you guys are participating in as well. In terms of consortium advocacy for STEM education, there are more things than I can count, but just to give you a flavor of what's out there, the 100K in 10, that's an initiative out there to train and retrain 100,000 excellent STEM teachers to educate the next generation of innovators and problem solvers within the next 10 years. And then support coming in from the Aspen Institute Skills for America's Future and STEM Connector, STEM Higher Education Council. There are numerous advocacy groups, and one of the things I've been working with these types of groups for the last 6 years, and it never fails to identify new groups all the time. And so one of the problems, one of the biggest challenges that I encounter as we try to build a larger, more organized STEM movement is to get everyone on board at the same time and place so that we're not recreating the wheel. And the problem with that is that it's absolutely mind-blowing to find out how many different resources are out there in various communities, and everyone's got these fantastic ideas. So the STEM Connector and the STEM Higher Education Council established 2 years ago. And this organization is there so that we can actually work together establish a centralized resource between government agencies, between businesses, between academic institutions to bridge it together. There are 46 people strong right now, 46 institutions strong, academic institutions strong right now, and those institutions are working together not only to drive the STEM economy forward, but to do this in partnership with industry. We're talking about industry like Fortune 500 companies like Verizon, AT&T, getting those bigger companies on board to invest in the next generation of STEM talent. So what I have available for you, and this is the way that I'll end up that section, is this book that's published, and it's called Advancing a Jobs-Driven Economy. And it's a book which really outlines the boundary-breaking collaborations between businesses and industry that fuel our economic growth. So there's a copy that's available for anyone in here who wants this. And this outlines about 60 different case studies of how partnerships are being established in the absence of having, state funds or what have you, how we can actually reach out to our business and industries as a model to drive some of the innovative work that we can do. So that brings us to this next idea of learning in context for the next generation of STEM students. And this obviously is going to leverage the ability to teach, to build capacity and talent in our communities in the areas in the STEM related areas. So the traditional teaching, right? Traditional teaching we all know about. Community colleges are guilty of this. Four-year institutions are guilty of this. Many of my teachers, when I was going through grade school and so on, were guilty of this, and that is you get a book, you read through the book, and you try to extract from the book what's meaningful. And then after you do that, you're either going to get into a group discussion, and then you're going to get assessed on that information. It's a pretty traditional way of thinking about how most subjects were taught or have been taught in the past. But the emphasis now is in shifting this idea of teaching and learning in the STEM disciplines, and STEM disciplines are definitely leading the way. So obviously, students don't learn best, or maybe many of the students don't learn best simply by just reading and regurgitating what they know. But they prefer to have that hands-on, real-world experience with the things that they do. So contextualize their learning and then make it meaningful for them. Now, if you can do that in any of your classrooms, I think that you've just created a captive audience, and that captive audience is going to listen and learn in a much different way than they would on their own just by reading and regurgitating. So the shift in teaching and learning in STEM disciplines, we hear all these buzzwords like active learning, problem-based learning, competency-driven instruction, inquiry-based, integrative, all these different things that now are starting to shift. And so, Dr. Torres, so IMSA's been here for decades, and this is stuff which is built in the core of what this institution does. But for the rest of the civilized world, you guys are at the front edge of things. And I'm going to embrace that, and I'm going to promote that as much as I can, because I think that the idea of adopting what's been done here and the implementation is a really key part to building that successful future. I read before that in about 4 years or so, one of the goals of IMSA is not only to have that national recognition, but to become a global authority in the STEM areas and in the teaching. And so, I have no doubt that IMSA is going to accomplish that. But as they do, as IMSA does, we as observers and participants and teachers need to make sure that we're on board with how IMSA does this, so that we can learn and implement some of the best practices that are identified here at Home Central. So part of what these shifts in teaching and learning will create and have created are a national spark that fuel the change in STEM education. As a couple of these things we know them in our communities, we've heard about them. Things like Project Lead the Way, youth apprenticeship programs to get students more into the businesses and the actual industries, bridging gateway programs to college to help the transition to higher education, dual credit middle college program, outreach and education efforts such as science boot camps, College for Kids and community science nights. There's been a resurgence of all these things, not only in our area in the Midwest, but nationally, to help promote this idea of building that STEM capacity. So when we talk about the education component, we're talking about things that we're trying to introduce that are not only innovative, but they're transformative for our society. And those innovative and transformative changes that we can actually implement are best exemplified by what's here at home base. And I'm not trying to inflate anything just by being here, but it is absolute fact when I look at what's happening here at the Illinois Math and Science Academy and look at their mission, distinguished by profound questions, collaborative relationships, personalized experiential learning, global networking, generative use of technology, and pioneering outreach. All these things come together in a real defined package in order to set the stage for success in the future and the future of our kids. And of course, Lindblom Math and Science Academy, really interesting partnership that they have with Baxter International to build Biotech Center of Excellence on the south side of Chicago as well. And then the idea of integrating in 3rd through 8th grade in a context where there's a continuum of learning with the STEM partnership schools and that partnership with Aurora University. And Pathways in Technology, Early College High School, or the P-TECH in Brooklyn, which supports, again, a 9 to 12 model. So if you put a 3 to 8 model next to a 9 to 8, 9 to 14 model, what you're going to get is a continuum of education which is going to create that funnel and pipeline to get our people and our students ready for that workforce and those high-tech jobs. It's a really interesting model to think about, but it does demand a lot of work, a lot of initiative from the advocates to actually push this out there. And I see a lot of those folks that are sitting in this room today who are pursuing the knowledge to make STEM education more relevant and applicable to the students that you guys serve. So one of the other points of innovation to help us develop this new generation, new way of thinking. And I'm saying new because for many people, including myself, it's relatively new. Again, the thought's been out there to actually generate these STEM hands-on based learning experiences. But to generate these kinds of resources, we turn to the National Science Foundation. So this is not relatively new. This has been around for over 20 years now. So established in 1994, the National Science Foundation, Advanced Technological Education. How many of you guys here are knowledgeable about the ATE, NSF ATE? Anyone here familiar with NSF ATE? Okay. I'm going to show you a resource here that is going to be kind of like a hidden gem. And for high schools and middle school teachers, and for any teacher who's in this room who's looking to grow and continue to develop those STEM pathways in your classroom, I would argue, and I would put it out there for you guys to think about, to work with your community colleges, work through programs that are supported by NSF ATE. We've been around for over 20 years. And these efforts have led into the development of national centers, regional centers, and resource centers. And so if we take a closer look here, there are 42 National Science Foundation centers, ATE centers, specifically Advanced Tech Education Centers. And the goal of the Advanced Tech Education Center is to really push the idea of developing the STEM talent pool, and to work closely with technology, work closely with the industries so that we can make sure that as we're teaching our students what they need to know, they're doing this with alignment to our industries and our industry needs. So if we look at these centers, all these different centers which are up here, and we try to figure out, well, there's so many different things that constitute science, technology, engineering, and math. Those 42 NSF centers, they're spread out throughout the United States, but those resources are available to you regardless of their base location. They're headquartered in certain areas, but your resources are your own, and it's simply a phone call or the contact. And if you guys want to find out more information about any one of these centers and you don't know who to contact, just let me know. I'm happy to help you out with that. But we can look at some of these centers and the focus of these centers. They include advanced manufacturing technologies. Now the ATE NSF, they're fabulous at using acronyms for everything. I think that most academic institutions love acronyms. It's very creative to do that. They get carried away a little bit with some of these acronyms acronyms like FLATE, Florida Advanced Tech Education, and so on and so forth, some really creative ones as well. But the core of it is looking at the different focus areas. And then once you look at those different focus areas, I am absolutely certain you can find a partnership that is designed and specifically tailored to what you need. So advanced manufacturing technologies, we have agriculture and biotechnologies here. We serve in Madison as a North Central headquarters for biotechnology. So if you're interested in promoting or getting biotech education and information, come and see us or contact me, because we are interlinked with the national headquarters that are in San Francisco. But we're part of the North Central headquarters for BioLink, for biotech instructors. We have engineering or energy and environmental technologies, engineering technologies, IT, learning, evaluation, and research, micro and nanotech, security technologies, all these different things and all these different centers. Okay, so they're not just centers and they're not just there by name so that they can have a really fancy acronym. They actually are supporting the development of numerous projects that allow us to actually contextualize learning. And I have two examples here. The first is something called guitar building. Okay, how many of you guys may be familiar with this? Because this is finding its way in a lot of the high schools now. So the guitar building thing, guitar building initiative, Lead with Guitars in STEM, is an NSF-funded project that originates from Sinclair Community College in Ohio, but they have a national following for the number of people and the core of the folks that they serve. 36 states is their impact zone, 570 STEM faculty members, and over 19,000 students. And what they're doing is they're actually using this ability to create a guitar in the classroom, build the guitar, but as you're building the guitar, you learn more about math principles, you learn about harmonics, you learn about all these different principles that really build on the STEM education. And there are 12 core STEM competencies that are addressed through the guitar building. Now, this is a really impressive initiative by the NSF, because their core competencies are 100% aligned to the Common Core and the next generation skill standards. And so if you're interested in hosting some, guitar building, train-to-trainer type workshop, you can contact these folks here, Thomas Singer, who's the principal investigator on that particular grant. So these are grant-based initiatives, but grants come and go. And sustainability of the programs are really important. And so how do we sustain these NSF programs and grant-funded programs when the money goes away? We have buy-in from the academic community who value this. And when that value is evident, those programs stay. Okay, so the other case study that I want to bring up here is our program in biotech. So we were the first in the nation to start a biotechnology program back in 1987 in the technical community college system. So our program has been around for over 25 years. We started this in '87, and since then we've been awarded over $5 million in state and federal funds to support what we do. Like I said before, we're the NSF ATE BioLink Center for Excellence in Biotechnology. We're the headquarters for the Midwest. Our faculty, Lisa Seidman here, has received national recognition for actually putting out her textbooks, one of which contextualize math. So basic lab calculations for biotechnology. Okay, it seems like a very simple thing, but I worked at the University of Wisconsin for about 9 years in the Department of Medical Genetics. And I fielded about 13 or so graduate students while I was there. And it was really surprising that at the level of graduate work, those folks struggle with things like C1, V1, C2, V2, and math calculations. And it's not something that you're going to find in your traditional calculus class, because they've taken all those courses and maybe even, advanced mathematics like nobody's business. But when you talk about lab math, there's a very specific approach, and we've shown in our program and through our approaches that using very directed contextualized instruction, there is a huge leap in the way that we can prepare our students to enter into the workforce. And math, we know, is one of the most narrow gates that one has to squeeze through in the STEM fields. And so if we can actually contextualize math for our field, it makes it a lot easier for our students to receive the training that they need to be successful. So as part of our biotech and our tradition of actually creating this type of a curriculum for our students, we also started very recently a program in stem cells and regenerative medicine. Now, that was kind of a difficult program to get rolling. We're the only program in the United States that has on-site facility for training in human stem cells and regenerative medicine in the Tech and Community College, and largely because of the cost due to those kinds of programs. So I run that program, and it's been a challenge to actually try to make that program affordable and accessible, and we've reached the point where we're there. And we've received a second round of funding from the National Science Foundation to begin a dissemination round for what we do. What that means is that we're going to reach out to the over 400 schools that have biotech programs in the American Association for Community College to help them adopt some of the things that we've developed. But it doesn't stop there. We're reaching out into our K-12 partnerships so that we can actually bring contextualized instruction into those classrooms, into your classrooms, where we can align some of our curriculum to those next generation science standards in the core, the Common Core as well, so that it becomes a readily adoptable curriculum. So if you're interested in being a part of that, you definitely will want to let me know as well. So if we look back in time, this is kind of how that stem cell education program came to be. We started off in 2007, and we piloted a program with 4 students. It was kind of one of those little proof and concept type things. And we had 4 students, which grew to about 12 students between 2007 and 2011. And we partnered heavily with our industries to do this because of the overwhelming cost of the program. Well, we fast forward to 2011 to 2012, and based on some of this early work, we were able to secure about $1 million from the National Science Foundation Advanced Tech Ed in order to create a program. We created that program, and 4 years later, we now have a 2-semester certificate in stem cells that has had national recognition. We've had 50 students, about 50 graduates that have gone through. The majority of them are currently working directly in the stem cell space, and they outcompete any of our other students who are coming from our local secondary or other universities and colleges that are in our area. Our program is driven by an advisory board, which is 40 members of our Center for Regenerative Medicine at our UW-Madison, our partnering institution, as well as our industry partners. And so the things that we do, and this is one of the most difficult things about the program, the things that we have to do to maintain the solvency of the program are to make sure that what we're teaching is in lockstep with the current developments. It's a really hard thing to do because if you know anything about the world of stem cells and regenerative medicine, it changes quite rapidly. And so I actually have my students help out with that. We go through the literature search process, and they identify things in the literature that they might be interested in bringing into the classroom. When they do that, my job is to actually take that interest and turn it into something which we can scale down and do it affordably. And we try to do that with the resources we have available. For everyone else in this classroom, what we would like to do is give you curriculum and anything that you would need in order to bring in some of the base knowledge for teaching stem cells and regenerative medicine. And over the next 3 years, we're going to be running workshops for our K-12 partners at Madison, where we have our facility, and we'll be inviting folks through different avenues to come and join us. So this education initiative, as I said, we started a 2-semester program. We developed a wealth, an abundance of practical inquiry-based education material in stem cells technologies, and we're in the process of dissemination of these materials now to our partners. We are hoping that what we've done is to create programming that is scalable, it's transformative, it's accessible, and it's readily adoptable. And so if this is something which you might be interested in bringing in or at least finding out more about in your institution, please do let me know. In our area, we've constructed a laboratory specifically for this purpose because we are using this as a platform to actually train the trainer and then get people thinking about how they can actually bring this stuff into your areas. And again, I know that money is tight. There's no question about it. But the resources that we have available and our industry connections, both locally and nationally, allow us to actually partner with you to help to develop some of the reagents and resources and things that you need in order to introduce some of the programming. So the bottom line is that it is doable. And we've used this actually as a platform to reach out not only into communities where we're trying to get a ready return for people wanting to go into biotech, but going into our elementary schools and middle schools so that we can actually inspire people to think about these careers in science. And as doing such, we've impacted over 17,000 students, 350 educators, elementary school, middle school, high school, K-12, and four-year institution professors as well. And then directly 50 bioscience programs that are running associate's degrees, and so they're starting to adopt what we've created. So we have a while to go, a way to go, but with the interest and the initiative that you may have in this room, you can help to actually promote some of these things to grow our talent pipeline. So the last thing I want to mention here is the link to the workforce and aligning STEM education with workforce demands. So this is a little bit more of a continuation of the principles which are outlined in this book for advocating for a jobs-driven economy. So the traditional STEM pipeline, and I should point out that these are the folks, Rob Dennison, President Dennison, Dr. Martha Cantor, who some of you may know as a former U.S. Undersecretary of Education, and Edie Frazier, who's the Executive Director for this particular advocacy group, work together to actually put this information into a context where it can be readily digested and it's accessible to everyone who needs it or who wants it. So the traditional STEM pipeline is outlined here. We have many academic STEM programs that are based on industry needs already, right? This program is an example, and a shining example of one. Increasing number of academic programs, however, are facing budget cuts. Friends of mine that run programs up in Minnesota for biotechnology and Minnesota Community Technical College have their program on hold right now. Because it's not that the industry doesn't need those people, it's just that the resources for these institutions is shrinking. And so how do we actually think outside of the box to support those programs? Successful STEM programs are being lost, and there's no question about it. And how can we prevent those losses? Many of our academic programs, we struggle with recruitment, retention, and the push to increase diversity. But the bottom line is that today's STEM education, with the current momentum and environment, it's just not meeting those needs that we just outlined here for the growing industry demands. So there are two models I want to show you. The first is our traditional model here for what we're thinking about for STEM education in the career pipeline. And so this zone of missed opportunity, it's there, and we see this all the time. And that zone of missed opportunity represents when there are more careers than job-ready candidates. And we've got to change that some way. And how do we actually change that? We can change that by working with our industries to make sure that we contextualize our instruction, that we make our instruction aligned to what those industries are looking for. And in doing so, I have a really strong sense that those industries are also willing to put some flesh in the game as well, because it is those industries that are the beneficiaries of these new modes of instruction. So the idea here is to work with employers and the employer supply and employee demand to reach this common ground where that new instruction is aligned with what those employees need. And it's a simple diagram. A lot of us have been doing this already, but the interesting thing is that this model of STEM 2.0 isn't coming from academics. It's coming from the business side of the house. And so now that the business side of the house is getting on board, there's a saying about moving at the speed of business, right? And if you guys know what I'm talking about, when business gets on board and they want to get something done, things will get done. And so this idea that business is actually acknowledging this need really is the push for us and the right timing for us to actually start to adopt some of these things and bring them into the classroom. But it's not going to be so easy. It's not easy because it involves us as educators partnering with business leaders and our policymakers. And it's this consortium, this collaboration between educators, business leaders, and policymakers that really will be the driving force, not only to create the environment to support the STEM space, but to sustain it. Now, Like I said, there's a lot of those examples in this book already, and I encourage you to take a look at this, and I have these books available for you. There's a copy available for any one of you who want this book. And they're free, so just grab one on the way out. I'm not sure exactly where they are, but I brought copies plenty for everyone. I encourage you guys to take a closer look at that book. So I have a couple of concluding remarks, and one is that the call for action, right? Continue to seek commitments and infrastructure and administrative support for what we do. STEM instruction, we need to create STEM instruction that aligns to the next generation skill standards. They're competency-driven, inquiry-based, problem-centered, and integrative. We need to advocate for national business and industry collaborations. We need to bring them to the table to discuss, and some of you guys have already been doing that, and I am absolutely impressed at the level of which I've seen that happen. And then explore and adopt opportunities for students and teachers to engage in more STEM learning activities. And a lot of us are doing that nowadays too with outreach and education. The issue with that is that we have to deal with longer term investments in generating that STEM pipeline. Right? Long-term investments, short-term return. There are a lot of metrics that go in there into that equation that don't necessarily create an environment where it's favorable for us to do these things, and I know resources are already tapped. And then finally, create curriculum and revision the STEM classroom to introduce materials that lead to transformational change. If it's not stem cells or biotech, it's easy to identify these things in other areas if you go through things like this for professional development, or contact those folks who are heading up those ATE centers in the sub-area that you're interested in as well. Be a part of that, and then continue to advocate for our students. And I think that as we move forward, we're going to be in an amazing world of bold discovery, and we're going to create those opportunities for our students. So in closing, I want to acknowledge just a couple of our folks here at Madison College, our program and directors at the National Science Foundation, partners at the City College of San Francisco who are working with us on those NSF grants, our leadership behind the NSF ATE Center for Biotechnology, and then the folks at STEM Connector as well. Thank you for your attention and your patience, and please let me know if you have any questions or if I can ever be of service to you as you continue to do the good work that you all do. So thank you very much.